Welcome back to Korean Cinema Today, the Korean Film Council's official podcast. I'm joined once again by Korean film expert Darcy Paquet, and I am your host, Pierce Conran. I am a writer for the Korean Film Council and writer for twitchfilm.com, as well as a fledgling film producer, but let's not talk about that right now. So Darcy, it's a pleasure to have you in the studio with us again today. And Darcy is, of course, the founder of KoreanFilm.org. He is a professor at Kyunghee University. He is the founder of the Wildflower Film Awards, and he wears many hats in the industry, including acting these days. And he's also a program consultant for the Udine Far East Film Festival and the San Sebastian International Film Festival. We're going to be talking about the star system today, but before we get underway, let me just remind you that if you want to get to the latest and greatest on Korean film, you can log on to koreanfilm.or.kr. That's the KoBiz service from KoFic. And there you can get lots of news and features and box office and a number of other things. We have a newsletter. Please subscribe to that. Or our Korean Cinema Today webzine. And you can listen to this podcast again. You can find it on YouTube. You can find it on iTunes and, of course, on the website as well. If you're searching for it, look for Korean Cinema Today. And also make sure to chat with us on Facebook or on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is at Korean Film Biz. That's B-I-Z, all one word. And for Facebook, just log on to facebook.com/kobiz.kofic. That's KoBiz.KoFic. So here we are in Seoul, live, or not live, sorry, this is recorded from Hongdae. And it's a very, very cold day today. It's autumn, but things are getting pretty chilly pretty quickly. But today we're going to be chatting about the star system. So Darcy, welcome back.
Thank you.
So first of all, perhaps to kind of give some background or some contextualization for our listeners, what are the main differences from a bird's eye view of the Hollywood and Korean star systems?
Yeah, I mean, they are quite different in the way that they're structured, in that the management companies in Korea have a lot of power. And if you're an actor inside a management company, it's not simply that they negotiate contracts for you and that they help you when you're on their set, but they really kind of create this whole protective network, this environment that you're inside. And so the Korean management companies are much more hands-on in terms of developing their stars, controlling their careers and different, deciding on different aspects of their career. Whereas in Hollywood, you might, you have an agent and then who you pay a certain percentage to negotiate deals for you. You have a manager who also gets a percentage. And so these people that you hire, perform various functions, but it's not like you step into a management company that really is kind of all controlling, I guess. And so it's a different system. It's a different model.
It certainly sounds quite different. Now, you said the word controlling, and that's interesting. It's telling. So, is this a good model? Is it? Let's just start with: is it an effective model?
I think it has been, certainly. The star system in Korea has developed quite a bit over the past 10, 20 years. K-pop is a different sort of industry, but that's obviously been very, very successful. And I think that the model works especially well in K-pop, as it's developed because, young stars are given intensive training. They're really kind of created in many ways by their management companies. And so the different management companies have just developed a tremendous influence in the K-pop industry. In film, it's a little bit different. It's possible to make your start as an actor outside of one of these management companies. And, some people get their start in theater and then maybe make some independent films and eventually break through. If you kind of come up from the beginning through the management company, then you will kind of have your career somewhat more shaped by, the taste or the strategy of the management company. So in some ways, the companies may create a star where it would not have been possible to have on their own. Like if you're a young actor, and and you're looking which way to go to kind of strike out on your own or whether to join a management company, I mean, your chances of becoming successful are probably much better in a management company, especially if you don't have a particularly good mind for business or that sort of thing. And I mean, the downside is that sometimes, once you do become established as a star, you may not have as freedom as much as you would have in the Hollywood system, for example.
Okay. Now, staying kind of on these differences between Korea and Hollywood or even other industries, I mean, what is it that makes kind of a Korean star? We look at some of the people, the enduring stars of Korean cinema, and names like Song Kang-ok pop up immediately, and that is not your standard kind of a blockbuster superstar. You know, he's the droopy-eyed, but of course incredibly talented Song Kang-ho. You know, he's not your usual kind of attractive muscular figure, for instance. But nevertheless, he's been a huge presence who had almost 30 million admissions to his films last year, which I believe constitutes a record for one actor in 1 year. So how would you kind of account for this, that kind of star power?
I know it's surprising kind of the diversity of different star types in Korea, and that, certain actors like Song Kang-ho and Kim Yoon-suk is another good example, who have really been able to succeed just on the basis of their talent alone. And so I think that, perhaps that points in some ways to, perhaps it's a compliment to the Korean audience that they recognize talent when they see it. Different people around the world have at times complimented the Korean audience for their sophistication. and I do think it is kind of there are cinephile elements in the Korean audience where they do recognize a really strong acting performance, even if the actor himself is not, the standard pin-up model of male beauty. And so, it's been quite encouraging to see actors like Song Kang-ho, Kim Yoon-suk, Yoo Seung-young is another example, just become very, very popular and very successful over the years. On the basis of their talent and their humor.
So those are big stars that came up in the 90s or in the early part of the millennium. But these days, new stars are just a little bit different. So we already mentioned the K-pop industry, and we're seeing a lot of these kind of idols. Now, an idol is someone who's either a K-pop star or a K-drama star who's amassed this enormous following of generally quite young fans. And so obviously it makes sense for films to for production houses, for directors to kind of bring on one of these stars and hopefully tap into their huge fan bases. But and we've seen quite a lot of this. And how would you say this kind of experimental casting? It's getting less experimental as we go on. But how would you view this style of casting?
There have been both successes and failures, but I think that the successes have been quite influential. And if we take one example, the movie Architecture 101, which featured 4, main characters, and 3 of those 4 were kind of established film actors. But Suzy, from Miss A, the K-pop star, took on one of the roles. And in many ways, she was the actress who really kind of received the most attention from that film. She was one of the big drivers behind the film's success. The producers of the film commented that, from the very beginning, it did really help to have her fan network behind the film. Because it wasn't a film that opened, with this marketing blitz. It didn't look like it was going to be a tremendous hit. And it did eventually go on to sell over 4 million tickets. But that initial stage in which it was not a very well-known film and they were looking for good word of mouth, I think that it really helped to have a K-pop star in that cast and to, get more people talking about the film and to get it really pushed on the internet. That being said, that doesn't always work. And, Suzy was a case of, she does have this real charisma that works really well on the screen. And it fit really well into the film. And so it was very organic, her appearance in the film. And it turned out to be a very successful case. As a counterexample, there's a movie codenamed Jackal that opened with another very big K-pop star, Kim Jae-jung from JYJ. And, he has no shortage of fans who were very enthusiastic about having him appear in the film, and they were, anxious to kind of promote the film and, his acting career. But in the end, the film didn't have what it took to break out as a hit. And so the film was a commercial disappointment. And so that goes to show that, a K-pop star does not turn any film into a hit. But in the right circumstances, it can really kind of give the film a very valuable boost.
That's interesting. You mentioned someone from JYJ, because another member of the JYJ group recently made his own debut. The film was actually also did not do very well financially here, but however, his performance was incredibly well received.
Yeah, this is Park Yu-chan, who appeared in Haemu. He's also been, doing some work on TV, some acting, and he's a very, very popular singer, but who personally has a really strong interest in acting. And I think he himself is hoping to become more and more active in the acting arena. But clearly he does have some talent as well. I mean, K-pop stars don't come up out of nowhere. You have to be really hardworking and really dedicated, and you have to have a certain amount of talent to kind of make it through this regimen and then to become successful. Obviously it doesn't guarantee that you're going to, have acting talent, but he's a case of a K-pop star who did kind of demonstrate his credentials in Haemu. And so it looks like he'll have the opportunity to continue acting in the future.
Absolutely. And following on from another perhaps success story is an actor who won the inaugural Best New Actor at your very own film awards, the Wildflower Film Awards. As of course, Lee Jun, the M-Black member, who was in Rough Play.
Yeah, I really liked his performance in Rough Play. He obviously he threw himself into the role. It was not an easy role at all. It's this character who, finds stardom quite suddenly and then struggles to deal with the sudden rise from obscurity. And he did a really good job. And so I think that he was recognized. Rough Cut was not a big mainstream film, and it didn't turn into a big box office hit. The director was Shin Yeon-sik, who did Russian Novel, well known within the independent film community, but not, a big director in the mainstream film industry. The film was produced by Kim Gi-dak, which gave it, a bit more of a higher profile. But I think what the film did more than anything else is demonstrate that Lee Jun had some serious acting talent, that, and that appearing in a film like that, even if it doesn't, have a really, successful commercial run, and even if it doesn't get seen by a huge number of viewers, for stars, image is very important. And if you can appear in a film that receives, critical praise, and that if you get some praise for your acting, then it does give your image a bit more depth than it may have had before when you were only active as a singer. And he's another actor who I think really, he first found success as a singer, but he's really has strong ambitions for acting as well. And so he's looking to continue his acting career in the coming years.
I have to admit that when this phenomenon kind of got underway a few years ago, I was a little skeptical. One could say quite cynical about this, thinking, we have these kind of K-pop stars, and I'm not a big K-pop fan. And I was thinking, well, are these really the good actors we want in these films? But I've certainly been proven wrong on a few occasions, and I'm quite happy to be proven wrong again.
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly examples where the opposite is true and where it just doesn't work out, But I think that producers have been smart in often casting K-pop stars in not the main roles, but in important supporting roles, at least to start with.
Like Cold Eyes is an example, or The Attorney as well.
Yeah. And by, kind of getting your foot in the door, and and they do the same thing with TV dramas. I mean, K-pop stars appear in many TV dramas. There are many singers who are kind of juggling both acting and singing careers at the same time. But if they're successful in doing that, then it's really good for them. And I think producers appreciate kind of the added boost in publicity that they bring as well.
Obvious, yeah, definitely bringing in these audiences. Speaking of that, various stars, big stars in Korea, not just people from the idol realm, but people. We're seeing a lot of big stars acting in independent films. Sometimes, an example would be Hyunbin, who starred in Kim Tae-young's Late Autumn in 2010, and then a year later he was in Come Rain Come Shine. So those are both very, very small films, and this is a huge star. We're seeing if we spoke about Kyungju recently, and again Park Hae-il and Shin Min-ah, two pretty big stars in a very a pretty small independent production. So what's your take on that? Is that for credibility, or is it passion projects?
Yeah, I see this as a really interesting time where the independent filmmaking community and the star system are kind of eyeing each other and trying to figure out to what extent they can cooperate. And so in one ways, it should make sense that it provides some benefits for both sides. I mean, obviously for an independent film director to have a name star in their cast, obviously many of them agree to act in the film realizing that they can't charge this huge fee, because it is a low-budget independent film. But many actors have been willing to do this. And by doing this, it gives your film, much more exposure than it would get otherwise. There are dangers to that because sometimes an actor's image can overpower a film and it can hurt the film creatively if it isn't a good match.
Okay. Do you have any examples that come to mind for that?
Well, I'm trying to think. There haven't been too many actors who've appeared in independent films up to this point. No big example jumps out, but that's clearly a danger. And, from a director's point of view also, when you have a big star in your cast, it's much more complicated to shoot the film. You can't just kind of drag them around and treat them as you would an independent actor. And so it becomes a bit more expensive and complicated to shoot the film. And so there are downsides as well, but if you do find an actor who's a really good fit and is hardworking and is kind of on the same page as the rest of the cast, then it can provide a lot of benefits for the film. From the actor's point of view, what it gives them is, again, it kind of gives some depth to their star image. Some actors are, they become very successful and then they may do a lot of advertising on TV, and they, maybe as time goes on, they do a bit less acting than they have in the past. And at some point, they have to kind of re-establish their credentials as an actor. And the other thing is just if you look at the mainstream film industry, there's less of a range in the types of characters that appear in those films. I think we can say that the independent film community has a broader range of roles available. And if you do have a genuine interest in acting, as many of these big stars do, they take themselves seriously as actors, they don't do it only to make money, then often they will jump at the chance to appear in a film that challenges them. And, if the commercial film industry isn't providing them roles that really challenge them, then they may be happy to kind of make the sacrifices necessary to appear in a low-budget film.
Absolutely. And I guess this is something, now that I think about it, it's been happening for some time. I mean, we have a number of major stars have appeared in Hong Sang-soo films over the year, though that in itself is something of a different phenomenon. But I'm reminded of Jang Dong-gun, who after making things like Friend and, around the same time appearing in things like Taeguki and then Typhoon, he starred in Kim Ki-duk's The Coast Guard.
Yes, exactly. That was a really interesting case because as a Kim Ki-duk film, that movie did much better than the average Kim Ki-duk film commercially. But as a Jang Dong-gun film, it did much worse than his other films. But he came out and he said that it was a really good experience for him, that he really enjoyed shooting the film, that he enjoyed being challenged as an actor. Kim Ki-duk was quite happy to have him on the cast as well. That's not recognized today as one of Kim Ki-duk's greatest films. But I don't think we can lay that at Jang Dong-gun's feet. I don't think it's. I wouldn't blame the actor in this case. I think that he gave his all in the performance.
Certainly, yeah.
That seemed to be a successful collaboration.
Actually, I quite enjoyed that film. I'm kind of I can be hot and cold with Kim Ki-duk, but that happens to be one of my favorites. Though I haven't seen it in a long time. But actually, we can use Jang Dong-gun as kind of a segue. Okay, so he's kind of dipped his toes into the independent realm, where he's also dipped his toes into is a much bigger realm, and that is the neighboring Chinese film industry. He starred in the film the Dangerous Liaisons, which was made by Ho Jin-ho, and that was a co-production. It starred Cecilia Chung and Tang Qi as well. And so we're seeing a lot of big stars who are moving over to China for some major roles. Kwon Sang-woo's done a few. Rain just signed on for a second Chinese film. We've had, again, another Ho Jin-ho film star, Jung Woo-sung. That was a good Rain knows. So what is your take on that? That's very much the polar opposite of going into the independent realm.
Yeah, it is. And a lot of actors are really interested in China these days. Many actors are studying Chinese at the same time as they're studying English. But often when you talk to them, even though they're studying both English and Chinese, they seem much more interested in acting in China than they are in Hollywood. I had a chance to interview Song Hye-kyo and Kang Dong-wan recently. And both of them are very interested in China. Song Hye-kyo has already shot, big films, The Grandmaster.
Films and the upcoming Crossing.
Yeah, with John Woo. And so she's, clearly doing very, very well with her appearances in China. And she's looking forward to doing more acting in China. Less interested in trying out Hollywood, she says. And both of them are quite, both of them spoke about their interest in supporting the creation of kind of an Asian film market. And, a greater degree of cooperation between Asian countries. And I think there's a sense that if you become involved in making Asian movies, either in China or in other parts of Asia, and you make it as an international co-production that can appeal to audiences from throughout Asia, then you can make really interesting films that can reach a much wider audience. And that I guess this is the type of film that they're very focused on. Whereas if you go to Hollywood, it's sort of like you give up your own, your own culture in a way to become absorbed in another type of filmmaking, a much more globally targeted filmmaking. But it's more of a challenge in some ways to shoot a film in English. But as we've seen in the past, when a number of Hong Kong stars like Chow Yun-fat, for example, have moved from Hong Kong to Hollywood, even though they've been very successful, I think that big fans of his still look back on his earlier work with a greater degree of affection. Of course, and his charisma seemed to come across much more in his Hong Kong films than they do in his even his very successful Hollywood films. And for Korean actors, it's an interesting choice because, going to China, there's more cultural similarity than there is in Hollywood.
Absolutely. It's more of a fit.
Yeah.
It's always, it can be a little jarring seeing a Korean star in a Hollywood movie. Rain's done a few, Ninja Assassin and Prince and Jun Ji-hyun, who used the name Gianna Jun, less so now, entered into the industry as well. But even 10 years ago, I guess now, was Park Chung-hoon was in the Truth About Charlie,
yes,
Jonathan Demme film.
Yeah.
It's a very, very interesting casting there. And now, but of course, we would be remiss if we didn't mention Lee Byung-hun, the blockbuster expert at this point, who's been in two G.I. Joe films, Red 2, and the upcoming Terminator film.
Yeah. He's made a lot of good connections in Hollywood, with Bruce Willis and other filmmakers. And
also speaks English very well.
Yeah, and so he's doing quite well in Hollywood. But I think that he's a rare example of someone who has been very successful and does seem to have real potential in the Hollywood market. But yeah, I think that, his language skills have been a help, and I think his
chiseled abs as well.
Yeah,
does that help?
His look. His look is an easier match, perhaps, with Hollywood.
Yeah. Now, there are some other stars who have kind of expressed an interest in breaking in the Hollywood market. Some even have agents. I know Ha Ji-won has recently signed on with UTA. But do you think someone like that could find an audience in America?
I'm a bit more pessimistic about that, just because the type of roles that are available in Hollywood right now they don't really offer that much potential for a young Asian actor who, has been very successful in Asia, but there does seem to be a limit in Hollywood. If you can do some martial arts, then that you can get a lot of roles of a certain type. But to get roles that really kind of, give you a certain range as an actor and that really kind of express your particular qualities as an actor, I think it's hard to do it today in Hollywood. I'm hoping that I'd be delighted if Hollywood started creating more interesting roles for Asian actors. But I think it's yet to happen. And language is a big issue as well because, if you haven't grown up in a foreign country, if you haven't started hearing and speaking English from a young age, then it's really difficult to reach that level of fluency to, appear easily in a Hollywood film and to reach a broad audience. China's an interesting example because they do have a tradition of kind of dubbing their actors. Yeah. Cantonese-speaking actors often appear in Mandarin films and their voices are dubbed. And so there is already kind of a tradition of dubbing actors in China, which makes it a little bit easier for, like Song Hye-kyo, for example. She does speak Chinese and she performs in Chinese.
When she plays a Chinese character, she's not a Korean person.
That's right. So she's playing a Chinese character. And when The Crossing is released in Korea, it will be her voice that's on the screen. But when it's released in China, there'll be a dubbing artist who speaks over her lines just to make it a bit smoother for native speakers. So
I guess that's certainly the language barrier, much easier to cross for China, at least for Korea and China. Proximity is obviously part of it. And I guess people thinking, well, Hollywood is still the top dog, but maybe not for long.
Not for long. China's growing so quickly that
Unbelievable.
It may not be long before it is the number one market in the world.
We're already saying in terms of the market size, like 2020.
Yeah.
It's incredible. It's 35% every year. Really something. Looking back on the Korean industry, we have a number of stars, both male and female, but there's certain difficulties, perhaps, as there are with any industry. In Hollywood, people often say that actresses have kind of a limited shelf life. Would you say something like that is true in Korea as well?
Yeah, a lot of actresses have expressed frustration at the fact that, especially once you reach your 40s or mid-40s or your 50s, that the range of roles available to you are really quite narrow. And it's a real shame because there is so much talent in Korea. There's a lot of acting talent. And, for men, it does seem that they get an unfair selection of roles, that they continue to be offered interesting roles, up, through their middle age. But, yeah, for actresses, there's less of a range of roles available. And many of them end up moving to TV because the TV drama sector does feature a much greater number of, older women characters, often roles as mothers, but compared to the film industry, there's more available there.
Yeah. It seems like, as you say, mother, that's very interesting because there's this kind of stark differentiation when you reach a certain age threshold. You're a love interest, and then you become a mother, or I guess we can say an ajumma as well, as we say in Korean.
Yeah. Yeah, and there is, I guess, some small progress being made, and I'm not completely pessimistic about the future, but I do think this is an area that clearly the industry needs to work on, and yeah, it's a shame that we can't see more of these really talented actresses, working in major roles in the film industry.
Absolutely. At the same time, to not be completely pessimistic about it, I think there are some very exciting new stars that are doing quite well for themselves, like Shim Eun-kyung and from Miss Granny and Sunny, and of course Chun Woo-hee, who even if you're not a fan of Han Gong-joo, you would still recognize her performance.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask you one more question. Who are your favorite actors in Korea?
Let's see. Among male actors, I really do like Shin Ha-gyun. I think that he has just this real, there's a real energy in his acting. He can take on a really wide variety of roles, and he, really plunges into every role that he's in.
Absolutely. His Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, the first Korean film I saw. Save the Green Planet was the first Korean film I saw in a theater.
Yeah, both of them are just really outstanding performances.
Absolutely.
But he's continued to take on interesting roles.
And he's changed his image quite a lot recently. Now he's kind of refashioned himself as this kind of drama star. There was a show Brain a few years ago, and his image is a little different. It's a little less. It's still eccentric, but it's a little more kind of composed, and he dresses better. It's interesting.
It's funny with stars like him who take a wide variety of roles and are really kind of really serious actors. Occasionally they'll find these moments when they really break out. And for him, when JSA came out, suddenly he became this really recognizable star. And he didn't really choose to go the popular star route. He took on roles like Save the Green Planet and Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. And so to a certain extent, he faded a little bit from the popular consciousness, although everybody still knows who he is. But with Brain, I think that he became more of a mainstream star.
He's more successful than he's ever been. Yeah. So, but I think he's paid his dues as a performer. And now he's reveling in his success.
Yeah. And in terms of female actors, I've always been a huge fan of Chun Do-yeon.
Of course.
From the very beginning, and I was so excited when she won the Best Actress prize at Cannes for her role in Secret Sunshine. I also really like Chung Yoo-mi. There are two actresses named Chung Yoo-mi, but the one who appeared in Silenced and in a number of Hong Sang-soo films. She's unlike any other actress, and I think that just her face is extremely expressive, and and she's an actress who has been both in independent films. She originally became known in a number of short films directed by Kim Jong-kwan, who kind of, as short films, they really broke out to an unusual extent. And then slowly she became more established in the mainstream film industry as well. And so I think that she has both some big films and some smaller films in her future, coming up in the next year or two. So I'm always excited to see what she does next.
All right. Definitely we've been speaking a lot of interesting actors there. We've had an illuminated discussion about the star system. I'd like to thank you for that. So many interesting things happening these days with the star system. It's constantly changing, as established as the industry is, it's still kind of in flux. Things are still kind of being trying to be kind of set in stone. So thank you very much for this discussion. It's been a pleasure talking with you, and I'm sure it's been great for our listeners. And thank you again for joining us here for Korean Cinema Today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed that, and please feel free to tune in again next time.